Xcraft39 back here with you again, and bad news. I have had video problems again. So what was going to be a planned multi-part instructional on building this engine has turned into a one-part with some follow-up photographs because I've lost everything. I ended up getting a new camera, so hopefully we won't have any more problems from here on out. So I do have still pictures of this, and I'm going to try to explain what I did and what colors I used, etc., etc., etc. And we'll try to at least get a description of what's going on and get you some decent photos of it. And then we're going to move on to wing construction and put this engine behind us. Okay, so what you can see here is I added spark plug wires to the engine. I just used some 10 gauge black wire for this. The front cylinders is a little bit tricky. There's a couple curvatures that were involved to make that happen. That was a little bit, not difficult, but a little more challenging. For the rear cylinders, they're quite simple. It just passes up over top of the front cylinder, just centers over top of it, and then it just dead ends in a ring, which does not exist in the model, so they just dead end behind the heads here. In this photo, I'm pointing at the push rods, which I've painted black, and a little bit of copper at the base. In the full-scale photos, it's either brass or copper. I've seen the push rod tubes painted silver or black. In this case, I went black. Here I'm pointing out the crankcase has been painted. I used ocean gray on this. I've seen so many different colors of gray. I think you could probably use anything that's darker and be just fine. And then I used just a little silver paint on the bolt heads. Here I'm pointing at the fact that the base of the cylinders are painted black. So previously I used panel fine line on the fins, and then I went back and painted the base black. And finally here I'm pointing out the valve covers, which have been painted black. Again, like the pushrod tubes, I've seen these either black or silver. In this case, I chose to go with black. You can see the edges have been rubbed some. We got some paint missing. You can also see it on at least one of the push rods here where there's some wear. This particular model is going to be a pre-war version, so they lived longer, unlike during the war itself. So they required more maintenance. There was more repairs going on, so I opted to show wear and tear in that respect on the engine itself. You can also see the exhaust in this picture. I started out painting that with all clad steel, and then just used two different variations of brown. One was a Humbrol brown, and then the other one was a IJN brown. And I started with the dark, just dabbing a little bit, and then I went over it with the Humbrol brown to get that effect. Just dabbing. Okay, I just wanted to touch base with you a little bit on paints that I used and techniques as far as the exhaust goes. So starting with the push rods, for those I just use this basic, just this cheap Tester's paint. I get it at Menards. Super cheap. Was using this when I was a kid. I still use it for some things. I don't paint big projects and stuff with it, but it's fine for little touch-up stuff. Spark plug wires. I use this. I said in the voiceover that this was 10 gauge, and not. It's 20 gauge. And it's just black wire. That's all it is. 20 gauge black wire. You can see that. Anyway. So that works really good. And, Hobby Lobby for this stuff. This is 16 gauge. This was $6 for all of these, and I do car projects also, so generally I use the silver and the black, but this stuff is really good and really cheap. I found this on Amazon, just this whole spool of this 26 gauge wire, and it's a ratty mess. It's just all wound onto one spool, and I don't care. I just grab the color that I want, cut a hunk off it, and away I go. These two little guys, you know, Hobby Lobby, super cheap jewelry aisle. So don't spend a lot of money on stuff that's specific for models. Not necessary. You know, you'll buy a little package of a wire with, you know, 2 feet of it and spend as much as you would on an entire roll, which is really foolish. So I recommend against that. Hit the Hobby Lobby or Michaels. Okay, so moving on. Crankcase, I used Ocean Gray, Vallejo Air Ocean Gray. And as far as these go, as far as the crankcases go, pretty much any medium to dark gray. You don't want to get too dark. You don't want to be too light. I've seen multiple different colors of dark gray. And I think you can use pretty much anything and be safe in that respect, to be honest. And then for the bolt heads, I just use this Vallejo Air. Nothing special. A toothpick. I just put a little dab of it, and then I just dip my toothpick in there, and then you just touch it on the bolt heads. And you can do half a dozen bolt heads with one touch. And it gives a really good, realistic appearance. Okay, for the exhaust, I sprayed the exhaust starting with the all-clad steel. So that gave me my base coat. And then I went over that using this brush. There's nothing special about this brush. It is old, and I wouldn't use it for anything else. It's got really stiff bristles, and they're all uneven, which is great. So I started with Vallejo Air IJN medium brown, and this is only available in a set from Vallejo, which is disappointing because I'm almost out of this, and I use it for quite a bit of things. So I'll have to find a different source for that, probably a Humbrol or something like that I'll end up using. So over top of the steel on the exhaust, just dab this brush in the paint a little bit, and then I dab it off on a rag. So it's not completely dry. You're getting a little bit of transfer, but it's not so much that it's going to completely cover your base coat of the steel. So just dab. And as you're dabbing, you have to turn the brush. Rotate it as you're dabbing, because this brush has a pattern to it. And if you just dab, 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 dab down the line without rotating it, you're going to have a pattern, and it's going to be really obvious. It will not look random, and it will not look natural. So I went over with the IJN Brown, and then I used this Humbrol. This particular one is leather number 62. Need to get some more of this too. Now that it's laying on the floor. So same thing, just dabbing over top of the IJN while you're rotating your brush. Be careful not to overpower the IJN brown and the black. You want it to all show through so you have a randomness to it. And don't brush. If you brush, it's going to look brushed, and it won't look right. So just dab until you get the effect you want. If you go too far, you can always go back and take your IJN brown and go back over a little bit more, or you could even just use some black too to give it a little bit of. If you went over your steel too much, you could just use some black and dab that over a little bit, and then go over that again with your browns. Careful not to cake it up too thick. You don't want it to look like it's been layered on too heavy, because that would be unnatural looking. The other way I've rusted this, rusted a lot of stuff, since I do car models also, like frames, for example. I use this. It's called Sophisticated Finishes. This is a paint with iron filings suspended in it. So fine you can't see them. It's like a dust. So you brush this on, and then I use vinegar, and I just dip the part in the vinegar, put it in a plastic bag, let it set overnight. Come back the next day, pull it out of the bag, let it dry. And that doesn't take a real long time. And it'll turn a really, really bright orange rust, which is pretty unnatural. So the way I combat that is I use, this particular one is Vallejo. You don't need to spend the money to buy this. You can, there's nothing wrong with it, but you can also use charcoal sticks from Hobby Lobby. And I just take an X-Acto knife blade and just shave the edge into a little tray until I get enough dust there. And then I take a brush, might even be this one, and dip it in there, and then I brush it on my fresh rust from the Sophisticated Finishes. And it'll bring it down. It'll bring down that bright orange look and give it a way more natural rusty look. The nice thing about Sophisticated Finishes is you don't end up with just one solid color of rust. There's different colors, there's different variations in the color, so it looks pretty natural. A lot of times that's what I do on little things like this exhaust manifold here. I generally just paint those. We're not going to see most of this anyways because it's going to be inside the cowl. And the only way you will see this is you'll see the tips coming out the bottom of the cowl. And if you have open cowl flaps, you'll see these back edges right here, here, and here. You'll see it through the back side. So don't get too stressed out about that. Coming up here next, now that we got this engine out of the way, we're going to start working on building a wing, it looks like. So stay tuned for that. Part 8 will be coming at you soon.